on Get It Girl. Here we are with Monica. Thank you so much for coming today. I was looking through your website, and I love every single way that you've used experiences and every hardship that you've had to grow from and for other people to grow from. And one thing that I really related to, honestly, was overcoming an eating disorder. I've had body dysmorphia forever. So tell me what you went through. Tell me about Monica Berg.
Well, first, thank you all for having me. It's great to be here with strong women sharing this couch. I think that most women really do go through struggles with how they look, with their weight. For me, and I think for a lot of people, eating disorders come about based on the environment you're in. We're finding that anorexia is actually genetic, and it can be triggered by the environment. So when you look at magazines and the women are airbrushed, and you go to a school where there's a lot of cliques, or there's arguments in the home, all of these kind of bring out somebody who has this disposition anyway. That was the case for me. I was never overweight. I was always a size 4. My beginning of this disorder that lasted for 5 years really started because I felt out of control. And so the more out of control I felt in my life, and although I didn't have this awareness then, the more out of control I felt, the more I controlled what I ate. And I remember, it was really the darkest, saddest, loneliest time of my life. And part of the struggle is that when you're in that space, you can't really see what's happening. No. So I thought that, I just lost a few pounds, when in reality I had gone down to a size 0. And I remember I had this epiphany one day, I call it the knowing, where I was in the bathroom doing my daily pinch test, where I would do a little pinch here, and I would think that was fat, but I was really just holding skin. And
checking for cellulite.
Exactly, fat deposits.
Very familiar with.
Oh my God, me too. Yeah, all the time.
And I write in the book that I would do it every day, but the truth is, it was really any time I passed by a mirror in private.
Any shiny reflective surface, give me a spoon, I'll do the pinch test.
And the one day, for the first time in maybe 2 years, I could see what I really looked like. And I started to scream.
Oh my gosh.
Because I couldn't see. I didn't see for 2 years. And I started to scream for my mother, "Oh my God!" And I looked and I saw this skeleton staring back at me. And it hit me that I had done that to myself. That I had basically been starving myself nearly to death.
You were your own villain.
Yeah. And so once I saw the truth, and even though the next day I'd lie to myself again, I knew that I had an issue. And from that place, I really began the journey of change and
how did you, because I was talking to Leah earlier today about how you had a moment where you were like, this is it, right? I reached the maximum and I have to change. So what was it that you thought of? Like, how did you start that process of change?
So the first is awareness, right? That's where we start anything. Always, it begins with consciousness. That's key. So once I realized that there was an issue, then I thought, okay, so if what I'm really craving is love, it's not going to come from somewhere external. I was single. I really wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to be loved by somebody, and we also were raised with these beliefs that somebody's going to take you somewhere, right? You're going to meet someone, and then you're going to get to the happy ever after.
Wait, we're not?
Like it's their job, not your job.
Right, exactly. I call it the Cinderella syndrome. We believe it's going to take us to. You can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So I started to do this work, this internal work of really learning to love myself, to honor my voice, to recognize my desires, my beliefs, and not having shame about wanting. And another really big thing, I think, for women especially, we do feel a lot of shame to say what we want, to say what we desire. And early on, when we're children, we're given this feedback that saying what you want is somehow wrong.
Yeah.
And then that goes on into our adult life. So I started to really hear the negative patterns that I had and the negative beliefs that I had. And I started to catch them one by one and say, well, if you want good things, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be loved, you must do that for yourself first. And that really began the journey.
It's hard because when you don't love yourself and the relationship with yourself is at stake, it's impossible to connect with other people. Because there's just so much turmoil already within you. It's impossible to connect to other people.
Well, you definitely can't from an authentic place. No. And then what happens later when we do get in relationships and we've been there a long time, sometimes people wake up and say, well, how did I get here? Or why did I choose this partner? Or I'm not really happy. So at any stage, whether you're single or you're not, you have to go back to that place of finding what you really desire or believe.
Yes. And for
Go ahead.
With all of the fear talk, right? That all of this fear of self, fear of what I think, fear of what I'm going to do, and I'm projecting that out onto the world. When does faith come in? Because for me, fear and faith are the same thing.
That's a great point. I refer to it in my book as certainty.
Okay.
So certainty really, I think, encompasses all of it. It's belief in the bigger picture, that we are all limited by our perspective, right? We view things in life through our lens of self, right? Our five senses, what we see, what we feel, what we touch, what we smell. But there's a whole nother reality going on, which is intuition, gut, faith, belief. And you need, in order to really be fearless, you have to have absolute certainty in the process of life.
Certainty in change.
And this is all in Fear is Not an Option.
Yes.
We talk about this.
We are here with Monica Berg, author, speaker, mother of four, wife, full of stories to tell and advice to give. Tell us about the book and the book tour, Monica.
I'm exhausted. The book tour's been amazing. I've traveled all over the world, and I think the most inspiring thing for me in that experience is seeing people, as I'm speaking, crying, and then coming after and sharing their deepest fear. I mean, somebody that I never knew, or I had just met, telling me that, for instance, I met a woman and her husband killed himself, and one of her children has depression, the other one's a therapist, and she's like, I'm so afraid they'll do this too, right? So it's been really, really powerful just to connect to people in a real way. My impetus for writing the book was that fear is universal. It's something that everybody experiences. Some are more plagued by it than others. So what I've done in my book is I've laid out how you can begin to eradicate fear from your life. And I identify 3 different types of fear, that there's a healthy fear, there's real fear, and then there's a logical fear. And some fear is healthy. And like healthy fear, it's set up to protect us, to keep us safe, right?
Danger.
Exactly. Don't put your hand over an open flame, you could get burnt. Or that intuition, don't get into the elevator with a stranger, if something feels weird and tells you not to go in. Those are things to honor. There's a very healthy place for that. Real fear also has a place in our lives. That is the idea that we fear our own death or losing loved ones or fear of failure, right? Those are things that really do plague us. But even with that can be a motivator for change. So if we're afraid of those things, spend time with the people you love, do things that you love, live the life that you want. And then illogical fear is just there to keep us worried, frantic, panicked, snakes, roaches, heights, elevators, you name it, right?
Chaos.
It's the thing that keeps us up at night. And it's the thing that's really not based in reality at all. It's completely flawed and there's no real truth in it, but it's where we spend most of our minds kind of stressed about these things in our lives.
So how do we use this fear as like gasoline for our change train?
Well, this fear just needs to be not taken seriously. It's not to give it energy. It really has no place in our lives. And if you decide that, you can absolutely drop it.
Because I love fear options 2 and 3. Number 1, I could learn to have a little more of. But it's interesting because fear is an option if you choose to pick it up. And I know personally, every morning when I wake up, I have to tell myself one day at a time, today I'm not going to choose fear. Because I know that I used to live in a place of making fear-based decisions every day.
And on top of that, I find it that this overall idea of fear, we sit here and we go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to choose fear today. But then when you're in the moment, when someone says something and it makes you feel a certain way, or someone leaves the room and you go, why did they do that? Did they get offended by me? That is also fear.
All of that's fear.
Yeah.
But see, it's in what you just said. You said, I'm going to make a choice. No, it's not a choice. It's not an option, right? So if it's not an option, there's no choice to be made. It's those things that when you suddenly awaken your consciousness, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Somebody asked me, what do I do when I'm afraid, if fear comes up? Which is really rare, thankfully, because I've done the work that I've written about. But the first thing I do is tell myself fear is not an option. It does nothing to change a situation. It just feeds the chaos. So it's not an option. The second thing is I ask myself, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then I go and do that.
I love that. I want that. That's all I want every day of my life.
I need that quote on my wall.
Where are you right now in the book tour? Is it over? Are you going to keep going?
I just finished in Sao Paulo. Was the last
I
want a book.
last week. I will bring you.
How do we get a book? I need a book.
Look at this. Check this out. See, we are. So you asked how we're going to do to get a book. We are going to have a giveaway on our social media. Okay, so please keep up with that. We're going to be posting it on our Instagram. So please follow us at Get a Girl TV to know more. We're going to have more information there. And thank you, Monica, so much for coming.
Thank you. It's been great.
It was
Thank
great.
you for having me.
Yeah. We learned a lot today.
We learned so much.
Yes.
There isn't an option like I thought it was. Whoops.